there's a common question that comes up a lot about this idea of financial aid budget.
Yep.
So the question is, our school has exhausted our budget for financial aid. However, we do have several seats empty. The board says that we cannot overspend the financial aid budget, but we do have several students that could come if we give them some aid. So
Yep.
what should we do? How should folks really look at that?
Another fantastic question. So I think that, so as far as I'm concerned, the financial aid budget, the budget doesn't really mean very much, folks. What really matters is the amount of revenue that's getting generated as a result of discounts, not the discount itself. So what the first thing to understand in this is financial aid is not an expense. We don't write a check for financial aid. It actually increases our revenue. So my rule of thumb, once I've kind of hit that target number that we've set, and we do set target numbers, and there are good reasons for that. But once you've hit that target number, the real question becomes, okay, empty seats, do I discount them? And my rule of thumb is simply this: if a family is going to pay me 50% or more of my tuition, I'm taking that family. You know, in other words, I'm getting 50% of the revenue that I wouldn't get, that would just be empty. Now, some people will
Sure.
say, but wait a minute, if I do that now, next year I'm stuck with them. Yes, you really are. So, but you have to remember that every single year you have the same opportunity to maximize your revenue, and that's the real purpose of the financial aid lever, is to maximize revenue. And every single year you need to do the very best that you can to discount to the appropriate families what they need, but not more than they need. So that opportunity every January, February, and March to work with financial aid and to fill those seats and to maximize the top line revenue, that is the real goal. And if schools can do that well every single year, I think they can sit back and say, we did our job. The CFO did his or her job in maximizing revenue. So now, what happens if it's more than 50%? Then start looking at every single one individually, making sure that it's a family that really brings other things to bear at the school. Remember, when you're giving someone a discount, make sure that they're really truly mission appropriate.
And as another way to look at it, is this correct to say, look, if you have an empty seat, essentially that's 100% financial aid because that seat's bringing no revenue. You've
Well,
got
that's
your bills
exactly
paid
right.
for.
It,
Yeah.
it, it, it really is. If that seat is empty, go ahead and just discount that completely on your books because it's doing nothing for you. That's a great way to look at it, Clint.
Would you say that this is a tough thing to do though? Like if you have, let's say, a K to 12 to do in the early years, because you need to be pretty sure, right, that you'd be able to not fill those seats in the future. Is that it? How would you
Well,
look at it in the
yeah.
early
So,
years?
so here's what I've always said is that, if a seat's empty, it's gonna be empty until you fill it, and
Right.
and so fill it, because what you want to do is create demand. So the more the less capacity that you have available, the more that people want to come to you. So it's a chicken and egg kind of thing. But the real thing is fill those seats. Get to the point where you're looking at people and saying, you better get in here early, because if you don't get in here early, you won't get into our school.
Okay. So based on our two questions already about recession and cash reserves and financial aid, I see a lot of follow-up questions. You want to get to
Great.
those Okay. So
Go.
first one was from Meredith. When you mentioned the 25% number in regards to cash reserves, she didn't
Mhm.
catch the entire statement. 25% of what?
Great. Thanks for the clarifying question. The benchmark for cash reserves from ISM is that cash equal to 25% of your total operating expenses. So the goal for your cash reserve, your bank reserve, is 25% of your total expenses, your operating expenses.
Okay. So Meredith, hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, please continue to ask. Um, okay.
So
So
said
there's
another
there's
way, let's say your budget's $10 million, so then your cash reserve goal is 2.5.
okay, great. And that actually answered a couple of folks' questions, so to clarify that. So again, hopefully that was clarified. Um, so here's a question. Now, if you need me to repeat this, it's a longer question. Let me know.
Okay.
Sherilyn, I see your question here about financial aid because this comes back to, I believe, filling seats. Our financial aid was exhausted this summer. We had several mission appropriate students apply to upper school after the financial aid was gone.
Hmm.
We decided as a board to allow, let me keep scrolling here, to allow those students to come based on what they could pay because those classes were already paid for by the students already enrolled, and we needed students in those classes in the upper school. ISM used to recommend that schools fill butts and seats, especially in the upper school. Is that still how ISM advises? So I think that's maybe a clarifying statement
Yeah.
on exactly what
The
yours
right
is
that you did exactly. You made exactly the right decision.
saying. Okay,
Exactly the right decision. Fill the seats.
perfect. So confirmation that you did exactly what we had just recommended. So that's awesome. Um, Miriam, you had asked, what if you haven't hit the target number? So Terry, you had mentioned a target number potentially of seats. What if you haven't hit the target number? Do we need clarification on what that means, or
I'm assuming she means she hasn't hit the target number in terms of the money that's allocated for financial aid. Is that
perhaps let's go with that? And Miriam,
okay?
if that is not correct, why don't you
Yeah,
follow up?
tick us on that. So I'll never forget. I was working with a dear friend that's a head of a school in Houston, Texas, and we were working on their strategic plan, and part of their initiative was they wanted more diversity. They wanted more financial diversity, and so we kept ticking up their budget for financial aid. And she finally looked at me and she said, we don't need it. People don't come and apply for it. In other words, they just didn't have a big application pool for financial aid. So she finally decided, well, I'm just wasting time here. We don't have the applicants. So so if you haven't exhausted it and you're full, well, great, good. That just means you really have maximized your revenue. If you haven't exhausted it and you're not full, then we want to start looking at the admissions program and making sure that our admissions program is bringing enough people in to look at the opportunity at the school, because it is that is your pipeline, and the admissions department has to be in charge of that. So we really probably have to address the admission process.
And so there was a clarification on this. So the target was about not hitting the net tuition revenue target. So I believe this is an
Ah,
example here. Budget is 10 million, you've reached 9 million, so the empty seats are not paid for. I don't let kids unless they're super at that point. I'd rather cut costs.
so if you can cut costs, but I mean, if you're a million short, it's probably a better approach is cutting cost and looking at families that have need but will come in at a discount. And again, I do feel very strongly about that 50% number. When you have a family that can pay 50% of your tuition or more, I do think that's a difference maker in the financial aid scheme of things. When you have to give a larger than 50% discount, I think you have to look at those a little bit differently.
And here's an interesting question from Janae. So what if initial applications for aid exceed your budget? Do you shave awards to meet budget, or do you just go over budget from the beginning?
Great question. So you're going to have to decide, school, that you're going to have to answer this philosophical question: is should you meet demonstrated need, or should you meet some percentage of demonstrated need? And schools are on both sides of this, and I'm not sure there's a right or a wrong to this, but I think there are lots of areas in between. We do not. Our recommendation has always been to meet need, but not one more penny than demonstrated need is. But a lot of schools have taken a bit of a different take on that and meet some percentage of need. So I think you have to decide that to ask to really make a determination on this question.
I see a lot of questions on financial aid, so that's obviously a hot
Great.
topic everybody wants to know about. Because I mean, it is a tough. There's so
It's
much gray area with
it,
it.
Financial aid is a very, very, very difficult process. You know, trying to figure out to whom to give money and how much and when. That's tough stuff. It requires us to be thoughtful and intentional.
And so Allison had said, when you talk about this 50% or more, is that combined between what parents? Let me see here. Is that combined between what parents can pay plus a state voucher, or just what parents say they can pay?
So most schools don't have state voucher. Most of us don't have the benefit of state vouchers. There are a few
Right.
states that have that. So I would be looking at that at what the family can pay, right? What the
Okay.
family can pay.
Okay. And Sherry, you said, well, we find that give once we give financial aid, it's difficult to get parents to pay more in the
Yeah.
coming years. How do we get parents on financial aid to pay more?
Yeah, you don't. You don't. I mean,
Yeah.
they, the answer, the right answer is you need to do the best you can when they come in the school to assess their need and meet their need. But then every year, their discount is going to go up because tuition goes up, but also what they pay needs to go up too. In other words, if you have a 3% tuition increase, everybody needs to pay a 3% tuition increase. Just
Yeah.
because you get financial aid doesn't mean that your price is frozen forever. It will go up, but you're still getting it. You're getting the same percentage discount off of the total. So let me say it another way. Let's say that I come to your school and I make an application for financial aid, and you take my child and you give me a 50% discount. And this year tuition's $20,000. Well, that means I have a $10,000 discount. Next year, when my tuition is $20,500, my discount's still 50%. It's not 50% plus. It doesn't don't let it raise every year by percentage. Hold the percentage steady.
You know, if you like what you heard today and you want to keep up with the latest trends, research, and proven growth strategies, then head on over to go.isminc.com/SI. This will take you over to our 2020 Summer Institute page where you can learn about our research-driven workshops that are designed to strengthen your skills, give you confidence in your role, and provide you with the most up-to-date strategies that are designed to spark growth in any school. And on this page, when you scroll down, you will see all 24 workshops that we are running this year in Philadelphia. And what's so unique about all these workshops is that not only do you get the strategies, but you get comprehensive action plans and direct access to a network of peers and consultants to help ensure that when you return home, you are able to create the actual plan you need to make 2020 and beyond your best years yet. And if you use the filters at the top, you can see all of the workshops that pertain to your position. And no matter whether you are new at your school or you're looking for a deep dive into a specific topic, there truly is something here for everyone. And one of the great things about all ISM workshops is if you're not satisfied with your event for any reason, ISM will give you a full 100% refund, no questions asked. So if you like what you see, you can certainly learn more about all the workshops available to you and your school at go.isminc.com/SI. Thanks so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in Philadelphia at one of our upcoming workshops.